So this is François Schmidt from CNRS in Wimereux, France, and this is a talk about quadratic constitutive equation for the turbulent Kolmogorov flow. And more precisely, this is the third part of a series of three short presentations, which is about application of the approach to the turbulent Kolmogorov flow. This work was done during the PhD thesis of Wenwei Wu, which was defended in February 2021. The advisors were myself, Lipo Wang, and Enrico Calzavarini. And it was published in Physics of Fluid in late 2021 in the paper that you see here. So Kolmogorov flow was proposed to his students in the late 50s. The first reference for this was, in fact, in 61. What is it? It's an open turbulent flow without boundaries, which is statically non-homogeneous along one direction, which is here Z. So it's anisotropic, and its force classically is forced by a sinusoidal force, which is along the X direction. And it's anisotropic in the Z direction. So we have constant pressure. What we use is a pseudo spectral code, and we have done statistics over time and also spatially over X and over Y. We have a velocity scale, which is linked with the forcing, and also a time scale. And these quantities are used to adimensional the different equations, and we can also build with it a Reynolds number. So we have different parameters and 8 different runs which have been done with different Reynolds number base of microscale going from 40 to about 200. And we can compute different statistics, and it's what we show here. So the mean, the first quantity that we considered is the mean velocity. So if we consider the mean velocity, if we average Navier-Stokes equation, we have an expression which gives, in fact, when the result that when tau is 0, so for laminar flow, the mean velocity profile is also sinusoidal. And for turbulent flows, we also find that the mean velocity profile is sinusoidal with a form which is slightly larger than the forcing. In fact, kappa is a numerical constant, and which is, as we can see in the right, is slightly larger than 1. In fact, there is no theory to explain this. It's a numerical result. From this, we can also consider second moments. And from the equation directly from Navier-Stokes, we have a result which gives tau, the stress. And we find that the stress is proportional to a cosine. If we consider second moments, from Navier-Stokes equation, we have an expression giving tau. If we assume that u is proportional to the sine, so we have an expression giving tau as a cosine, this is directly linked to the equations concerning the normal stresses, u prime, v prime, u prime square, v prime square, w prime square. It's a numerical result to find the curves that we show here. So we see that they are themselves are proportional to the square of the cosine. And we can extract numerically the different coefficients which are given here. And we see on the right panel that the different coefficients are increasing with Reynolds number, and then they seem to reach a limit. And what we find also is that u prime square is larger than w prime square, and which is larger than v prime square. So the normal stresses are never equal, And in all the different simulations at different Reynolds number, we have the same inequality between them. We can also see that first tau is proportional to a cosine. And since u is proportional to a sine, when we make the derivative of u, we will also have a cosine. So in fact, the eddy viscosity is going to be independent of z. And we have an expression which is linked, which is given here, and which depends only on the Reynolds number. And so we can plot, in fact, this relation in the different plots that are given here. So it's a surprising result because, in fact, the eddy viscosity for example, for channel flows depends on the distance to the wall. So it depends on the equivalent of Z. So we can test directly the eddy viscosity hypothesis using the indicator that I already presented. And since it's not really a surprise to know that in fact is going to be wrong in different places, because in fact the diagonal is not vanishing. And so rho is what we show in dotted line is the profile of the velocity for reference. So what we can see is that rho rs is close to 0 when the mean velocity is small. So for the local maximum and local minimum, we see that rho rs is very small, and the eddy viscosity hypothesis is completely is not at all verified. And so it's a failure. And on the contrary, it's approximately valid with a ratio which is larger than 0.9 in the shear zones. And so we can consider also the quadratic development with different terms linked with T2 and T3. So here I show the tensor T2 and tensor T3. And we can do a projection as was done for the first term using rho r T2 and rho r T3, which are given on the left. And if we plot them, so they are plotted in the left hand side panel in red, green, and blue. So the red one is with S, the green one is with T2, and the other one is with T3. So we see that rho r T2 is quite small, and rho r T3 is large when there is a failure of Boussinesq. So when the red curve is very small, we see that the blue one is quite large. So we see that R is never aligned with T2, and when the mean velocity vanishes, R is approximately aligned with T3. All these results were obtained with a Kolmogorov flow, a turbulent Kolmogorov flow with sinusal forcing. And the sine function is a bit peculiar because you know that the second derivative of the sine, you obtain again a sine function. So we thought that perhaps some of the properties that we found were linked to this specificity of the sine function. But in the Kolmogorov flow, in fact, the forcing is not necessarily sinusoidal. So what we try to do is to have a forcing here. We use the forcing which is mentioned here, so it's still with a zero average, but we have chosen a Gaussian shape. And we wanted to see what's happening with the different shape of the different statistics. And we see on the right that we have normal stresses which have a strange expression, and in fact we have no analytical fit to propose for these expressions. It's only numerical result. On the left, what we found is that we see that the shear stress and the mean velocity derivative are perfectly superposed. So this was a result showing, in fact, that again here we have eddy viscosity, which is not depending on Z. So from the assumption and the result, numerical result that nu T is constant and independent of Z, then we can, using Navier-Stokes equation and our numerical result, show that in fact the second derivative of the mean velocity profile is linked with the forcing. And so if we do a twice integration of the forcing, we should be able to retrieve the mean velocity. It's what we have tested on the right here. And the dot line is perfectly, the small dot line is perfectly superposed, we see, with the mean velocity, the blue curve. So here we see that contrary to the sinusoidal forcing case, the mean velocity is not proportional to the forcing, but it's proportional to the double integral of the forcing. And also, if we check the three-term development, in fact, we have different results. So first, for the eddy viscosity hypothesis, we see that we have a failure when the mean velocity gradient is small, and it's approximately valid when with a ratio which is larger than 0.9 in shear zones, as before. And we see also that the tensor T3 is not vanishing, and in some places, and also in the middle, where we have the failure of Boussinesq hypothesis, we see that in fact both tensors T2 and T3 are not vanishing and are used for the closing of the different the Reynolds stress. So in fact, first conclusion for the first part, Boussinesq did not solve the disparate enigma of turbulence because his linear constitutive equation is not working. It's not verified. For the turbulent Kolmogorov flow, what is surprising, it's approximately valid for some zone with a high shear, but it fails for vanishing shears. So, but there is a difference between the channel flow and the turbulent Kolmogorov flow, because for channel flow, the eddy viscosity depends on the distance to the wall. And for the turbulent Kolmogorov flow, it is Z independent. Another difference is that the coefficient of nonlinear terms are not diverging for the turbulent Kolmogorov flow. What we need to do, of course, to go further is to take into account the memory effect of turbulence. And about this, just to finish, in fact, it's a well-known result that the gradient transport is not working. It was already indicated in the book, which is classical, the classical book of Tenex and Lumley in 1972. They call it the gradient transport fallacy. Corsin also, in a paper in 1975, discussed this, and the title is quite explicit: Limitation of Gradient Transport Model in run work and in turbulence. In fact, the main issue which is linked with this was also already discussed in an early paper of Rivlin in 1957, where he made an analogy between, in fact, turbulent flows, Newtonian, and laminar non-Newtonian flow. Why? Because it found that, in fact, we have a profile of the mean velocity for channel flows, which is non-quadratic in both cases. And this can be, in fact, used to propose viscoelastic analogies. It was discussed in several works, which are mentioned here. And for example, Hinz in 1974 has proposed a closure for the stress, for the shear stress UV, the average of UV. You can see here that we have an expression with a kernel, M, capital M is a kernel, and in that expression, it is non-local. And this takes into account, in fact, the memory effect of turbulence and the non-locality. It was also discussed in several papers by P.S. Bernard. We see here the latest one in 2018. And we also have a contribution in this field, which was published in 2010. It's a way to, in fact, to follow the Lagrangian fluid particles and to locally compute the stress, and to see that, in fact, you have a non-local origin of this stress. So, in fact, that's all. I mentioned here two works of mine in turbulence and in scaling analysis for turbulent time series.